The FIA World Endurance Championship, which is commonly abbreviated to WEC, was founded in 2012 and consists of the prestigious 24 Hours of Le Mans race. Being an endurance racing series, WEC not only pushes the cars and drivers to the limits in terms of speed, but also the driver's stamina and the car's reliability and efficiency in the races. The grid is extremely diverse with 38 teams that run 60 cars. There are also 3 drivers per car. The cars themselves are very different to each other, with some rivaling the performance of F1 cars, while others are based on road-going cars. I will put timestamps for different parts of the video in the description so that you can easily skip to specifically what part you want to watch. Let's begin the guide by looking at the cars in more detail. The cars are split into 4 classes: LMP1, LMP2, GTE Pro, and GTE Am. The Le Mans prototypes are custom race cars built around a technical specification, whereas the Grand Touring endurance cars are touring cars based on production sports cars. All of the classes run at the same time in the same race. You can think of it as one big race composed of several mini races. There is an outright winner and a winner for each class. Let's delve deeper and learn about the classes more thoroughly, starting with the fastest, LMP1. LMP1 consists of closed cockpit race cars built specifically for endurance racing. The class is split further into 2 subcategories, the LMP1 hybrids and the LMP1 non-hybrids. The hybrids are only for manufacturer teams, whereas the non-hybrids are only for private or independent teams that do not have the backing of a major car manufacturer. The only thing they can get from a manufacturer is the supply of engines. As of the 2018-19 season, Toyota Gazoo Racing is the only LMP1 hybrid team remaining. There are 5 privateer teams to make a 6-team class. The technical regulations are very open, so teams can create very different cars to each other. For the engine, the teams can use any type of cylinder configuration that can be either petrol or diesel. The only engine restrictions are that the non-hybrid cars have a maximum capacity of 5.5 litres and all engines must be 4-stroke. The minimum weight is 875 kilograms for the hybrids and 830 kilograms for the non-hybrids. Fuel-wise, the cars have to have fuel tanks of a certain size, and more importantly, fuel flow is regulated. It must be below the maximum per lap limit and the maximum instantaneous fuel flow, which means that power is limited. The chassis is restricted to within a certain set of dimensions, and the car's numbers must be white on a red background. All mechanical elements of the car must be covered by bodywork, and the gearbox must be a sequential with no more than 7 forward gears. Only 5 engines can be used per car over the course of the season. The speed difference between the hybrids and the non-hybrids is around 2 or more seconds per lap. Let's move on to LMP2. These cars are also closed cockpit race cars built specifically for endurance racing. Similar to the LMP1 non-hybrids, the LMP2 teams are independent of any car manufacturers, which means that they don't make the engines themselves. There are almost 20 cars in the class. Some of them are almost identical. This is because they do not have the freedom that LMP1 cars have due to the regulations forcing them to keep costs down. For the engine, all LMP2 cars must use the same 4.2 litre V8 that produces 600 horsepower. The minimum weight is 930 kilograms. The LMP2 teams are also restricted in their chassis. They have to choose a chassis from a choice of 4 manufacturers. This is why some teams have the same chassis. Their numbers must be white on a blue background. The gearbox must be a sequential with up to 6 forward gears. Fuel-wise, there is a common fuel tank capacity, and all of the engines have the same fuel flow. LMP2 cars are generally a few seconds off the pace of LMP1 cars. However, in some circumstances, it is possible for the top LMP2 cars to beat some LMP1 cars. Now let's look at the GTE cars on the other side of the WEC garage. Let's begin with the fastest, GTE Pro. The GTE Pro teams are all manufacturer teams. Unlike the Le Mans prototypes, the GTE cars are touring cars that have to be based on road-legal production cars that have a minimum number produced per year to qualify. For example, Porsche's car is based on the 911, Ferrari's car is based on the 488, and Aston Martin's car is based on the Vantage. Because of this, the grid is extremely diverse, with there being a huge variety of chassis, drivetrain layouts and engine layouts. Engines used must be the same ones found in the production cars, and the maximum capacity for naturally aspirated engines is 5.5 litres, while the maximum capacity for cars using any form of forced induction is 4 litres. There are also some other regulations. The minimum weight is 1,245 kilograms. Four-wheel drive is banned. The cars must have yellow headlights to distinguish them from the Le Mans prototypes at night. The numbers must be white on a green background, and special materials such as carbon fiber, magnesium, and titanium are banned from being used on the car except for spoilers and wheels. As the cars are based on production cars, the teams are allowed to modify their cars once every 2 years to keep up with the production car. These cars are naturally much slower than the LMP cars, with gaps being in the region of over 10 seconds per lap. The final category is GTE Am, or Amateur. This class is very similar to GTE Pro, however, there are a few key differences. While the GTE Pro teams are all manufacturer teams, GTE Am teams also consist of privateer teams that used cars from the manufacturers. The GTE Am cars also face the same restrictions as the GTE Pro cars. The main difference is that these cars are the GTE Pro cars from the previous year of racing, so the GTE Am drivers are racing with year-old cars compared to the GTE Pro drivers. This means that the performance of the cars is not too different, with there being some mix between the two classes during qualifying, though most of the time the GTE Pro cars are ahead. The other difference is with the drivers. GTE Pro teams can use a driver of any FIA grade, whereas GTE Am must use lower graded drivers. So, they were all of the categories. I will explain how the driver grading works in more detail, because all of the classes apart from GTE Pro have restrictions regarding the grades. The FIA categorizes drivers based on their previous achievements and their age. There are 4 rankings: Bronze, Silver, Gold and Platinum. Bronze drivers are amateur drivers with little experience and success. People over 30 who have no single-seater experience will also be categorized as bronze. Next up is silver. For this, a driver must have to satisfy at least one of the criteria listed by the FIA. An example of one requirement is to have won a non-professional racing series, such as the Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge. They are still classified as amateur drivers. After that is gold. These drivers are any drivers that compete in a national or international FIA series and meet one of the FIA's criteria. An example of one requirement is to have competed in Formula 2 since 2012 and to have at least achieved 3 podiums in one season. These drivers can sometimes be considered professional and sometimes amateur. The top tier drivers are platinum. They are professional drivers that have to satisfy at least 2 of the criteria. Some examples of these requirements are to have a Formula 1 super license, or to have finished in the top 5 of the Formula E championship. In LMP1, all drivers except bronze drivers are permitted. In LMP2, a 2 or 3 driver lineup must consist of at least 1 silver or bronze driver. In GTE Pro, the choice of drivers is completely free. In GTE Am, a 2 or 3 driver lineup must include at least 1 bronze driver and 1 bronze or silver driver. There is both a minimum and a maximum driving time per race for all the drivers. It varies with the rank of the driver to keep the field as level as possible. It also stops the team from only using 1 driver for a race. Now let's look at the venues the cars race at and the procedures of the race weekend. The race weekend takes place over 3 days. On the first day, there are 2 practice sessions for all cars where the teams test the cars in different conditions such as day and night under timed runs. On the second day, there is a 3rd practice session and then qualifying. The Le Mans prototypes and touring cars are separated for their qualifying sessions. The sessions last 20 minutes each and determine the order of the grid. On the 3rd day, there is the race. The races vary in length. The minimum length of a race is 6 hours. Because the races are so long, cars make many pit stops during the race. The time they take ranges from seconds to minutes. This variation occurs because of different jobs that need to be done at different pit stops. When a car pits, the crew can change the driver, the tires, the brakes, they can clean the car, adjust the aero and even replace broken parts. The list just goes on. This is why there is such a difference in pit stop times. The pit lane speed limit is 60 km an hour. Now let's look at the championship and point scoring system. There are 8 races around the world and 8 different championships. There's 1 driver's championship for each class and 1 team's championship for each class. For most races, WEC uses the FIA standard point scoring system. However, unlike other motorsports, every car that finishes below second place gets half a point. This is because just finishing the race itself is a huge achievement for both the car and the driver, hence the name endurance racing. The 2 exceptions to the point scoring systems are Sebring and Le Mans. So let's summarize. There are 4 classes within the same race, 2 of which are custom race cars and the other 2 are touring cars. The LMP1 cars are very free in terms of development and near the speed of F1 cars, whereas the LMP2 cars are made with set chassis and engines. The GTE cars have to be based on production cars, and the GTE Am cars are 1 year old and race with amateur drivers only. There is a 3-day weekend and the race is a minimum of 6 hours. There are 8 different championships and points are awarded according to the FIA system, with a couple of exceptions. And that was my guide to watching WEC. What is your favorite category? Comment below.